You know, it's pretty wild to think that George Orwell's 1984 was published over 75 years ago. But doesn't it feel like its warnings about Big Brother, constant surveillance, and twisting the truth are less like some distant fiction and more like our daily news feed? Well, today we're going to explore just how close 2025 might be to the world Orwell warned us about.
And this quote from the World Press Institute, it just nails it, doesn't it? It captures this feeling that I think a lot of us have. This sense that the rules we thought were solid are suddenly changing, and the ground beneath our democracies feels, well, a little shaky.
So that brings us to the big question. Are we really living in a new version of 1984? Let's actually take a look at the evidence.
I mean, think about it. What used to be a spooky cautionary tale is now just stuff we see every day. The very ideas that Orwell used to shock his readers, being watched all the time, punishing people for speaking out, demanding loyalty over basic facts, these are now regular themes in our politics.
And this isn't just a vague feeling. Look at these specific examples. We're talking about things like students and journalists having their visas taken away just for things they posted on social media. At the same time, you've got government watchdogs, the people whose whole job is to keep things honest, getting fired. Independent agencies are being pulled under direct political control. And then there's this working group, created to, review prosecutions of political allies? The World Press Institute points out, these aren't just abstract fears, they're happening right now.
And that right there, that's the real danger. Tyranny doesn't just show up one day and announce itself. No, it creeps in. It's a series of little steps, little changes that slowly normalize the erosion of freedom. It's a process that makes people more and more afraid to speak their minds, until one day, staying silent just seems like the only safe option.
Now, one of the sneakiest ways this happens is by messing with our language. And this gets us right to the heart of Orwell's biggest warning. If you can control the words people use, you can control how they think.
Orwell called it newspeak. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also terrifying. You just reshape the language to make certain thoughts, like rebellion or even just critical thinking, literally impossible. I mean, if you don't have a word for freedom, how can you even think about it? In our world, it's a really powerful propaganda tool.
And you can see newspeak in action right here today. A war isn't a war, it's a special military operation. An invasion becomes a liberation. A news outlet that disagrees with the official story, suddenly they're an extremist organization. The journal Words as Weapons of War explains that these aren't just different words for the same thing. They are deliberate twists designed to completely change how we see reality.
And here's why that matters so much. It's about the psychological effect. When you use these clean, sterile, bureaucratic terms for really brutal things, it numbs us. It makes horrible events sound manageable, normal even. It just dulls our emotional response and makes it easier for us to just go along with it.
And this whole idea of twisting language leads us to maybe the most unbelievable, most glaring modern example of this kind of Orwellian doublespeak, a new proposal for something called the Board of Peace. According to the economist Yanis Varoufakis, the UN Security Council approving this isn't just some political mistake. He says it's basically an act of self-destruction, a sign that the whole international system we've had since World War II might just be over.
So what on earth is this thing? Well, as Varoufakis lays it out, it's not a government body. It's a private corporation. It's chaired for life by one guy. It operates completely outside of any international law, and its whole purpose is to just hit the reset button on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, basically wiping its history clean. Oh, and get this, to even get a seat at the table, you have to pay $1 billion. It's like geopolitics has been completely privatized.
Varoufakis says the board is treating the whole region as terra nullius. It's a legal term from the colonial days that literally means empty land. It was the trick colonizers used to just take over land by pretending no one lived there, that it had no history. And this board is essentially doing the same thing, just erasing the Palestinians from the entire equation.
And this isn't even a new idea. He points out that old-school colonialism didn't start with governments. It started with corporations, like the British East India Company. That was a private, for-profit company that built its own army and conquered entire countries. And this Board of Peace, well, it looks disturbingly similar.
And that brings us right back to Orwell's most famous line, creating a private, unaccountable board funded by billionaires to take over a conflict and calling it a Board of Peace. It's a perfect modern-day example of war is peace. It's the ultimate twisting of words.
So it just leaves you wondering, right? If our political language has gotten so warped that peace can mean a corporate takeover, where do we even start to look for the real thing?
Well, interestingly, as we search for an answer, some of the strongest responses aren't coming from politicians at all. They're coming from spiritual leaders who are looking at this whole mess from a totally different perspective.
One of those perspectives comes from Pope Leo XIV. According to AP News, he points to what he calls a delusion of omnipotence. It's this belief that you can solve any problem with absolute power and military force. He argues that this dangerous way of thinking is what actually fuels conflict, not what ends it.
And another perspective sort of flips the camera around, looking not at the world out there, but at the world inside of us. The idea being, you can't really build a peaceful world without peaceful people.
This is put so well by the Buddhist monk Khenpo Rinchen Gyaltsen. He reminds us that, yeah, prayer and inner reflection are important, but they aren't the whole story. Real peace demands action, compassionate action that actually goes out and helps other people.
So what's really cool is how these two different views actually come together. They both point to this idea that peace is a total package deal. It's not just about stopping wars out there, it's also about taming the internal evils, the greed, the hate, the ignorance inside ourselves that fan the flames of those external conflicts.
Which brings us to this final thought. If it's true, if our world really is built with words, if language has the power to start wars or to imagine peace, then the words we choose, the ones we use, the ones we believe, and the ones we act on, they matter more than ever. So the question for all of us is, what kind of world are you building with yours?
Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. If you want to dig deeper into any of this, you can find a full list of all the sources we used right there on your screen.
Getting to the heart of the matter isn't always easy, but here we always look for the essence. Thank you for your time and your curiosity. Subscribe for more answers, and as always, thanks for watching.